Hello and welcome to another Marketing Minute. My name is Delaney Walker. I am the manager of Extend Web Services, and I am joined by our customer superstar specialist, Jennifer Ellis.
Hi, Delaney.
We're recording this later in the week on an afternoon, and I probably sound a little bit more enthusiastic than I feel. But we are delighted to be here with you to have the opportunity to talk about brand consistency, brand dissonance, all about brand and why it's important. So, both of us have previous work in pregnancy care centers. I was in Southeast Tennessee for 5.5 years doing fundraising, event planning, social media, marketing, fundraising, major donors. And Jennifer, you were.
I spent 7 years in Ohio at an organization there where I worked across the street from an abortion clinic at a pregnancy center there. And then I moved to Florida where I was the director of client services over 4 pregnancy medical clinics here in Florida.
So why is this important? The reason I wanted to kind of give our credentials, not only do we have marketing experience, but we have been in your shoes. You are on the front lines working with clients every day, whether that is in the back office with fundraising, like me, or you are working face to face with the clients every day, like Jennifer did. We also have marketing experience. And so we've seen this on both sides. We know the impact that brand and brand consistency can have for your center and maternity home. So let's start at the beginning. A brand is basically how people think and feel about your organization. It's the name, logo, colors, the way you talk to people, and just the overall feeling that people think your organization gives off. And the funny thing about brands is that there's only so much you can control. So you can determine what advertising looks like. You can determine how you're going to sound when you're in an interview, but how people feel about it is out of your hands. So it's both what you do to share who you believe you are with the public, and it's also the public perception.
Branding is so important because there's a few reasons. One, it builds trust. It also creates a clear identity about who you are, whether you are a pregnancy help center, a maternity home, a coalition, whatever type of organization you're from. It makes you stand out apart from other organizations. It builds emotional connections with those that you serve, and it encourages referrals. You want people to keep coming back to you. And with that, Delaney can add a little bit more context on some of these points.
I know it sounds a little crazy to think that brand can impact so much, but it's true, it does. On one hand, you can say who you are to a community, to the people that you are hoping to work with. You can put out that you are reliable, professional, and safe. Until they have a personal experience with you, or until someone they know has a personal experience with you, you are in charge of what your brand is saying to them so that they start to form a relationship with you before you guys ever interact. And the crazy thing is effective branding is impactful, but it's so difficult to be consistent. And I'm going to lean in to Jen here because Jen has had experience on the front lines in a pregnancy care center. Jen, what makes it so difficult to be consistent with branding?
There's several things that lend to it being challenging. First of all, there's multiple touch points from the time that they first come in contact with you to the time they come through their door to the time they leave. Staff training. You have all different sorts of staff and all different kinds of training that each kind of staff needs. Evolving needs and expectations. When I started in pregnancy help in 2011, it looked a lot different than it does now in 2025. So those needs and expectations are going to constantly be evolving and changing. Resource constraints. What's your budget like? We know that definitely is a big thing. And then competing priorities. You all have so much on your plate, and we always want to be able to be here for you and help you. But those competing priorities definitely can affect your brand consistency.
Oh my goodness, isn't that the truth? I mean, just even even outside of brand, in a regular workday for me, I'm constantly looking at what my to-do list is, what I should be focusing on. And then, as you go throughout the day, things are going to come through that were not on your list.
Always. It never fails. I have always say have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C list. And you might get your plan A list. If not, then you can always bump to B. And if not, you definitely have C left. So, yeah, we've got to roll with it.
So yes, I mean, just even in every day, you have those competing priorities. And that is one small thing. I do want to touch on a couple more things. So when we talk about multiple touch points, I thought Jen did a good job, but I want to also just vision cast a little bit. So when we talk about those different touch points they can have before they ever interact with you, we mean website, social media, brochures that you might have left around the community. Another one is when they come in for that first appointment, or even before they come in for that first appointment, talking to your team members on the phone or stopping by, maybe reaching out via instant messaging, whatever it is you guys have for your capabilities. And then once they are at your organization, everybody they come in contact with, whether it's a volunteer they see in the hall or someone that is walking through them, whatever your program is, walking alongside them, what is the message? What is the tone? What are the values that are being conveyed to them in person? And then even after they leave, what is that exit strategy? Whether you have a long-term care or it's a one-time visit, there's so many opportunities for them to be exposed and interact with your brand. So we've quickly hit on what brand is, the benefits of effective branding, and what stands between you and consistent branding. Let's dive into brand dissonance and the impact it may be having on your organization. Okay, Jen, test time. What does brand dissonance mean?
I didn't know there was going to be a test today, Delaney, but I do have this definition ready for you.
Nice.
Brand dissonance is basically when what you're saying about your organization through intentional branding doesn't match up with the experiences people are having with you. This can have a huge impact.
Especially since maternity homes and pregnancy centers' effectiveness often hinges on pairing professionalism and expertise with warmth, empathy, and compassion. You are meeting your clients in a place of vulnerability, so maintaining trust is imperative. I was in the back office during my time at a pregnancy care center. I know, Jen, that you actively met with clients, and I'm curious, what role did trust play in your clients' relationships with the center and the subsequent decisions they made?
Trust is huge. For many of them, it took everything in them just to come through the door, to make the phone call or to jump on the live chat or whatever way that they made an appointment to come see you. It took so much for them to come in there, so much bravery, so much courage. If they are presented with something that doesn't match with what's been presented to them so far, that trust is broken at the time that they're already at your window and checking in for their appointment. So that trust piece is super, super important. We want to make sure that every interaction that we have with them, that we're creating an atmosphere of kindness, of compassion, and of love and of grace.
You touched on it a little bit in your response. You were talking about like if somebody comes in and they're not greeted with the kindness that maybe they expected, they can kind of experience a little bit of that brand dissonance, a little bit of uncertainty, start to erode their trust. I want to dig a little deeper. I've got some scenarios to throw your way. You've already touched on one of them, though. You mentioned that if somebody comes in and they are met with something other than the kindness they expected, especially if that's what the center has been putting out, that they are kind, they are warm, they are welcoming, and they don't experience that, that can already start to erode their trust. So what exactly does that look like?
So say your center has, or your maternity home, whatever it might be, you've got this client that's come in and she's obviously in difficult circumstances, but you've got a staff member who seems to be struggling with keeping her personal feelings about her day or personal feelings about something she's brought in with her from home that she wasn't able to lay aside that morning before she walked through the door. And it starts to come out in a client interaction. That is going to have a negative effect. How can it come out in a client interaction? Maybe she could be sharper than she needs to be when she is answering a question about intake paperwork or mobile intake, or she doesn't have the most approachable look on her face, or she's walking around with her arms crossed because,
Mhm.
arms crossed isn't the most approachable posture that we can carry. Or maybe they've called the center and the person who answers the phone has a less than welcoming tone,
Mhm.
or they're so caught up in doing what they were doing from the last appointment that they don't even look up from what they're doing when she walks through the door to welcome them, to let them know what to expect next. And obviously, there's times when it's busy in the center and you can't do everything immediately, but even just lifting your head up from what you're doing or from your phone call and giving a warm smile, something like that will help represent yourself well and match up with that brand that you're putting out there that says this is who you say you are. Um,
Right.
having having paperwork or mobile intake that is user friendly. And I know this might hit a point with some people, but if we say that we're kind and we're compassionate, everything that we do and use should be kind and compassionate. And so if it's a technological struggle for them just to get
Mhm.
their paperwork filled out to be able to be seen, obviously that's not matching up well with who we said we were before they ever came through the door. So trying to keep things as smooth as possible from the very beginning.
And that last one is especially important if what you are projecting through your brand is that you are going to make the process very easy, that you're going to have answers for them really readily, that you are an expert. If they are already experiencing issues in your lobby, then they are going to kind of start to doubt if you are who you say you are. Jen, another one could be an organization providing comprehensive care but lacking clear services or not having an updated referral list when your website states you can provide community referrals. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, it is so important. And I'm sure most of you know this, but in with your wherever your organization is, to know the community referrals that are out there. What if it's a service that you can't provide? What if it's very clear in what she's presented to you that she needs more in-depth counseling, or she needs services for her child that she already has in order to be able to feel like she can carry this pregnancy? We want to be able to empower her to do those things and have those referrals. And if we're giving out a referral list, whether it's something we text her, email her, or hand her a piece of paper, and there's stuff on there that's obsolete, or she looks at it and goes, I've already tried that. That place closed. Obviously, that isn't going to help her in trusting you. You want her to be able to trust you and trust your brand, trust who you say you are. So keep that list updated as much as you can. I remember when I worked in the centers, sometimes it was a good thing for some of our volunteers to do, to call places and check and make sure that
Yeah.
this was still a valid place that they could go. Another one, of course, that's super, super important is keeping your adoption referral list up to date, making
Oh, yeah.
sure that your center's mission, vision, and core values meet up with that of the adoption agencies that you are referring to or talking with.
I feel like as we're talking, Jen, that I'm getting a little taste of what it was like to be on your team back when you were at the center, because you're like this, and this, and I'm loving it. You're doing a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. You might have to
So,
ask them if they liked when I went through lists like that.
well, we're on here for like 40 minutes, so I'm still getting a different experience than they did, I guess.
True. Yes.
I've got one final one for you. Let's consider that some centers and maternity homes have been around for a number of years. During that time, there have been different mission statements, visions, leaders, names, and logos. How might this trigger brand dissonance?
So, what if she shows up? So, before she even shows up, she gets on your website and she sees one logo instead of colors. And
Mhm.
then she pulls into the driveway of your center or gets off the bus or walks there. And she's like, is this the right place? Because it's
Mhm.
got the same name, but that sign looks totally different. Then she walks up to the door and she's like, well, this etching in the glass looks like what I saw on the website. And then you walk in and then you see again what you saw on the sign outside on the window inside. And then they hand you something to fill out, hand her something to fill out, and she looks at the top of it and it's got the one from the website. Wow. Talk about brand dissonance. Talk about confusing for her. And then, what's going to be on what you send home with her? What's going to be on what you email her or text her or the piece of paper that you hand her when she leaves? She's not going to know what to expect at that point. So we want to make sure that we're consistent. If we're going to make a brand change, let's do it all at one time across the board so we don't create confusion and a lack of trust in our clients.
It is really easy during conversations like this to feel overwhelmed. But don't fear, that is why we have some easy steps for building and maintaining brand consistency. First, you'll want to develop a brand guideline document. It sounds impressive, but really, it can be as simple or extreme as you want. On it, you're going to list your values, mission statement, vision statement, key messaging, the tone of voice you want to convey, and the visual elements you want to use. And by visual elements, I mean your logo or whatever designs you want to be in your advertising, like maybe you're more angular versus curved lines. It sounds like a lot, but I bet you already have half of those things written out somewhere.
So then once you have your brand guideline, it's time to compare everything that you use against it. Everything that you have, your marketing materials, your website, your social media, your email communications, your physical space in your centers, and staff and volunteer interactions to make sure it's all in alignment.
Jen, now reach back to your in-center days. How would this list make you feel? Like we just listed a bunch of things, like you should do this, this, and this, and then you listed off a whole slew of like what's your brand guidelines going to impact. How would that make you feel?
Well, the in the center version of Jennifer, when I was in the centers a couple years ago, could have felt overwhelmed by that. But
Right.
having worked closely with the marketing company that we used during my time at the last center that I was at, I know that once you've done this, it gets easier and easier and easier. So I'd suggest doing something like an audit once or twice a year. Whenever you look at all of your messaging, make sure it's in line with who you're saying you are. Make sure that your brand guidelines are kept in mind with everything that you're producing, and just go back through it. And it's not something you have to do on your own. That's what you have a team for. Sit down and have at one of your managers meetings or staff meetings and just have a time where we say, okay, let's go through all this and look at it and make sure we're still on target, that we're still sticking with our brand, sticking with our mission, our vision and our core values.
Yeah. And I really like that you said it doesn't have to all like sit on their plate. This might be something, like you said, that they work through over the course of a meeting, or maybe at one staff meeting, you kind of list out, hey, these are our brand guidelines. And now I want each one of you guys to look at a different part of this organization, the different like messaging we have going out there. So maybe obviously the person who's over volunteers, maybe they'd pay attention to how volunteers and front office staff are interacting with clients. Someone who's over your like advancement team, looking at how you're talking with donors, what advertising you're putting out there. So it really doesn't have to rest all on your plate. You just might have to be the person that starts the conversation.
Right. And something I want to add to that is that it's really important too. You may have multiple different kinds of clients that you see that come to
Yeah.
you. You may be in a college town, and you may also be in a town where you have clients that they work, but they have a hard time making ends meet. They come from a different background than the college kids that have come from maybe an affluent home. So make sure that you're looking at the different kind of clients that you serve as well when you're doing these audits, because there
Oh,
are different clients in the community that you serve. So that's definitely an important piece to that.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. Jen, let's end on a fun note. After an organization has established its brand and achieved brand consistency, the next step is building authenticity into its brand. What is one way they can do that?
Client testimonials are huge.
Mhm.
How else are people going to know that they want to go there? If they see a video on your website or your social media from somebody who's been served in your
Mhm.
center, you can't speak much higher than that unless that video is somebody that you know for the authenticity of what they experienced in the center. So having those testimonials available, whether it's a quick video a client sends you and then she gives you permission to use it and she just takes it with her phone, or something that you're able to produce there in your center, somebody else can take a video of her. Just make sure you have that release in place
Right.
to keep her information, private, but also give the release for being able to use her on media. But those client testimonials will speak for themselves.
Yeah, and I do think there's something to touch on because I can tell Morgan, who's our social media specialist, I'm sure if she was here, she would jump in real quick and say, there is a difference between the testimonials you'll be sharing on like a donor facing page versus a client page. So on a donor facing page, you'd have the client's entire story there, whether they, like, if they chose life, they're post-abortive, or whatever the circumstances are surrounding them. On a client-facing social media page, you're going to focus on what the client's interaction was with you, not necessarily what the end result was. So they're going to talk about maybe the volunteer or the staff member that they worked with. They're going to talk about how you answered their questions. They're going to talk about how you walked alongside them.
Absolutely. And you have two different audiences on your client and your donor websites and your client and your donor social media. And so those videos will need to be geared towards those individual audiences.
The other kind of video you can do to build authenticity into your brand is team member organic social videos. This could be a selfie. You can set it up with the whole ring light and stuff if you want. But the important thing is that you are putting your team members or your volunteers in front of potential clients. You could have your nurse manager give a healthy tip once a month. Or if your center is really into SMART goals, which my center was, then you could have a whole series on SMART goals, hitting it from S through T, what each one of them means. You could have some fun videos where your team on Friday, there's a Friday fun question. You go around and ask them things like, if you were going to the beach, or like, where would you rather go, the beach or the mountains? It doesn't have to be something that is hard hitting. It has to be something that is engaging and allows them to see your personality and your expertise. Well, thank you for joining us for this month's Marketing Minute. We want to bring you information that equips and empowers you to reach her. Email us at support@extendwebservices.com to request topics for us to cover in upcoming podcasts. And if you would like us to walk alongside you in your marketing efforts to help you grow your impact, then you can also email support@extendwebservices.com. This has been Delaney
And Jennifer
from Extend. We so appreciate your time and we look forward to talking with you next month.